Hi guys, how are you? This is Dr. Vundi, aka the Wellness Doctor. How have you all been? I'm so glad to be back with this video, and this is a special one and it's close to my heart. It's a follow-up from an IGTV I did recently, and I was talking about consent, rape. Please, if you haven't checked it out, at the end of this video, I'll link my handle for my IG below and you can go check that out. But today I wanted us to talk about consent. Consent, that word, I know it's a buzzword of 2021, even 2020, consent. What is consent? And I have a few people lined up who will have a chance to talk to us about consent. One is just a regular guy. He'll give us his point of view of what is consent. And the other one is a lawyer, because let me tell you, some of these things get very tricky when it comes to the legal aspects. So please stay tuned for that. And just as I start off, I wanted to kind of define what consent is. And it's simply put, consent is where two people are mutually willing to engage in a sexual behavior and are willing to express the same by saying yes, all right? That's what consent is. Both of you have got to be willing. Both of you have to have expressed it. That's what consent is. But in a world where it's kind of obvious, yes means yes and no means no, I'm sure there's some blurred lines in there, yeah? So I'd like to make it clear. Yes means consensual sex, mutual desire, and willingness. And no means coercion, unwillingness, sexual assault, harassment, and rape, okay? And basically, I just kind of wanted us to debunk these things slowly as we go along in the interview, but I want you to remember what yes is and what no is. And just a fun fact, I wanted to ask you guys, did you know that if you consent to one behavior, it doesn't mean that you consent to everything? And what do I mean? If you consent and you kiss a guy, that doesn't mean now you consent to him grabbing you or filling you up. So I wanted you guys to kind of open your minds, okay, and try and see things in a more wider perspective, right? And as we go along, please, I'd love to hear from you. So I'd love it if you just put something in the comment section and let me know how you feel about what I'm talking about. So without further ado, I'll welcome my first guest. So guys, you can even notice I have a book here, because sometimes when it comes to things that have to do with consent and sexual harassment, we really have to get our facts straight. And I'm joined by a friend of mine. He's a lawyer, and I really wanted to get his outlook when it comes to matters consent, harassment, assault, those kinds of things. So I prepared a bunch of questions and I wanted him to like break it down for us, because the law can be a headache, but hopefully he'll make it a bit more palatable for us so we can understand, all right? Karibu sana Njoroge.
Thank you.
Yeah. So basically I wanted to start by asking, can someone give consent when they are drunk? So say I am out at the club, I've drunk, or I've done ABCD, I've smoked, whatever, and at that point, can I still give consent? Tomorrow, if I stand up and go to a police or go to a court of law and say I was assaulted but I was drunk, does it bear any weight?
Well, I'd like to give you a single word answer, but I can't, because what we have to do is we have to refer back to the law that governs sexual offenses. And this is the Sexual Offences Act, or number 3 of 2006. So I think in section 42, consent is defined as someone doing an act by your own choice with the freedom and capacity to do so. So when you talk about being drunk, that goes towards capacity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So being drunk affects your capacity to give consent. Now, the same law, it does define that the capacity is absent. Number one, when you take drugs, alcohol, or any substance that adversely affects your judgment or consciousness. You understand?
Yeah.
So when you're drunk, how drunk are you? If you're drunk to the point of unconsciousness, that you cannot give consent when you're drunk and you're unconscious. In fact, the law says that even when you're asleep, natural sleep, and someone comes in, engages you in a sexual act, there's no consent.
Wow.
When you're unconscious, there is no consent.
Wow, that's so interesting. But it still doesn't make it okay, right?
Yes.
Because I remember some time back there was this story of this weird guy who, I don't know, he was a doctor or something, and then he would sedate his patients and then he would assault them.
Yes.
So still there's something, like it's still wrong, right?
It is.
But it gets a bit, what's your comment on that? It's still wrong, but?
No, this doctor who induces,
Yeah.
in fact, that is a crime in itself, and it is given its own clause in the Sexual Offences Act.
Okay.
Section 27 of the Act says that administering a substance with the intent of committing an unlawful act. So if someone comes and gives you, it's the same principle of mchele. Someone,
Yes.
you go to a club, unaekewa mchele, then you're taken somewhere and things happen to you. That is addressed directly by the Act. So when I say being drunk, it's the threshold is what is difficult, because in in a criminal case, the threshold is very high.
Okay.
The threshold for proving that the act was criminal.
Okay.
Because you have to prove something beyond a reasonable doubt. So when you're drunk to the point of unconsciousness, where your judgment is impaired to a point where you don't even remember doing it, simply put, that is not consent in any form.
So ladies, that's really interesting to know. And that's why I wanted him to come over here, so that if you ever feel like you need to know the legal aspects, it's good to know these things.
Yeah.
It's good to know these things. The second thing is, if someone is repeatedly pestered, say for example, a guy is pestering you for nudes.
Yeah.
Send me nudes, send nudes, send nudes. Or pestering you. You know those guys, they are like pestering you at the club, they are following you around. So if you eventually say yes, if you eventually give in and say yes, does this count as consent?
Well, in my legal opinion, I don't think it is consent, because consent has to be, like I said, you make a choice freely and with the capacity. So this pestering that amounts to harassment, it does impair your freedom in the sense that you feel coerced. And there's a way that maybe a lady will be feeling, okay, this guy, if I don't do this, there might be harm to me in a certain way.
Exactly.
So when you feel that there's a threat of harm to you or another person or your property, the law is very clear. That is coercion. And in the face of coercion, it does saying yes does not amount to consent in the eyes of the law. Yes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
I read an interesting tweet the other day, and some babe said, you know, the reason why chicks say I have a boyfriend, you know that famous line, I have a boyfriend, even when they don't, is because sometimes they're scared. They're scared that if I just tell you no, first of all, you'll feel, what do you mean no? I'm not good enough. Like, why don't you want me? So,
Exactly.
and you know, sometimes men's egos can tip them off.
Yes.
So they're scared. So they'll say I have a boyfriend. So that fear,
Yes.
if there's fear, there can't be consent.
If there's a fear or there's a threat, if you feel like there's a threat to you, if a guy is insisting and you say, oh, I have a boyfriend, because you know, once you say I have a boyfriend, this guy will think, okay, I can't do anything.
Yeah, the guy might pop up. Yeah.
Yes, so what you're doing at that point is essentially removing away the threat of the use of force or the threat of harm to you. So when someone is pestering you in that way and you use that mechanism, you use that excuse, it's actually quite viable, because now at that point, this guy will know that I can't use force, I can't use any threats to this girl, because there is someone protecting her. So it's a perfectly good way of getting away from harassing
guys. Yeah. All right, so this is a third question. If I can't remember giving consent, does it still count? And this is the situation I thought about. And unfortunately, this is a situation that is real to so many women.
Yeah.
You go out, there's a guy, he's following you around, can I buy you a drink? You're like, no. Can I get your number? No. You even use that line for I have a boyfriend. You do everything, right? But then you wake up in the morning and you're in his bed. So you strongly feel that you did not give him consent. It's a feeling. You can't prove it. You can't remember saying no, but you strongly feel. Can I still go and say this guy assaulted me if it's based off of a feeling?
Okay. that then again, you see, I'll always take you back to what the law says.
Yes, yes.
And the law says that without, when someone is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, they're incapable. Their capacity to give consent is impaired. So at what point were you giving this person consent? You can't remember because your judgment had been affected adversely and you are in an altered state of consciousness.
Exactly, you blacked out.
Yeah. Blacking out is an altered state of consciousness. And that is one of the criteria that forms incapacity according to the law.
Oh, great. So, so it means if I'm incapacitated, of course I can't give consent.
You can't give consent if you have incapacity. A child, think of, an easy way of thinking of incapacity is thinking of a minor, a child.
Yes.
A child who doesn't understand cannot give consent. You, in a state of extreme stupor and altered state of consciousness, you cannot give consent. You're like a child, or even more different but similar is like someone who has mental incapacity.
Like dementia.
So those are the grounds that form incapacity. You're asleep, that you can't give consent. You're unconscious, you cannot give consent. You're impaired, you're under the influence of drugs, alcohol, what have you, to a point that it impairs your judgment. That in that state you cannot give capacity. Now the difficulty is drinking and then going home with someone is such a common practice in society that we'd be having assault charges all day, every day. But at the same time, if you know that there's circumstantial evidence in that this guy was pestering you and all your friends were like, wait, can you leave her alone? And the activity leading to that act doesn't make sense to you. Like maybe if it's a guy that you are flirting with the club, you had a connection, you are kissing, then when you're flowing into that point where your judgment or the alcohol is taking over, where now you black out, there can be this guy can make a claim that we've been jamming for 3 hours, and then I was like, let's go home. And you're like, because you're feeling the vibe. But if it's some guy who was chasing you around the club, at that point you can be like, wait, I don't even know what happened. You'll have that suspicion that maybe even put Chele in my... You're like, who is this? I thought I told you no when I remember.
So ladies, it's super important. If somebody is harassing you, tell someone. Tell your girls, just tell someone who can help you build that case. Even send a text. Vigilant. Send a text and be like, I'm in this club, there's this guy who's following me around.
Exactly.
You never know. That could be the one thing that saves you. I really like your answer, and you can move on to the next one. The next one is, if I tell my rape story online. So some guy has raped me, sexually assaulted me, or just done something inappropriate. If I tell my story on Twitter or whatever, can I be sued for defamation?
Now, what I'll say is, you better be damn sure that you're right. You better be saying the truth. Because, number one, for a case of defamation to stand, the statement has to be false. You understand? So if you're saying the truth, well and good. You say your truth. But if you're lying, and this guy brings a defamation case against you, and it's found out that you're lying, then you are liable. And in fact, moreover than being liable to defamation, which is a civil matter, it is now a criminal act under the Sexual Offences Act to wrongfully accuse someone of a sexual offense. Because if you wrongfully accuse someone of a sexual offense and that didn't happen, you yourself can be convicted and punished for the punishment, the sentence that this person would have received for that crime that you have wrongfully.
So if I accuse somebody of raping me, and he did not, I can end up getting the same sentence he would have gotten.
According to the Sexual Offences Act.
Right. So ladies, facts. So before, I'm not silencing or censoring anybody, but I'm just saying, before you go to Twitter, before you get onto your keyboard, focus on building your case. Go to the cops, give them the evidence. Go to the hospital, and that's one thing people don't do in this country. Come, let's I mean, good facilities. I'm sorry I can't mention their names, but good hospitals. We have the capacity to get those samples,
Exactly.
preserve them, fill out the forms, the PRC, post-rape care form. We have the capacity. So do all that before you jump onto Twitter.
Exactly.
Because you know what? If you lose credibility, it does more harm than good. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. And then the final question is, can I be raped by my spouse or the person that I'm dating? Is it still considered sexual assault or rape if I'm dating you? And the reason why I'm asking this is marriage or a relationship, is it automatic consent? If I'm dating you, Njoro, have I given you consent forever and ever and ever? Or is it that at every sexual contact, I must give you consent?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Oh, really?
Just because you're dating, just because you're married, does not mean I've given you consent. When you're married to someone, it means they have conjugal rights.
Yes, yes.
They have a right to receive, to have sexual intercourse with you. But you must give them consent at every point. There is rape. I'll take you back to section 42 of the Act. Consent is simply defined as freedom, making a choice with freedom and capacity.
Yes, and capacity. Yes.
Yeah. So if any of that is devoid, even if it's your husband, if you tell your husband no, that's it. There's no consent. You've rescinded consent. And over and above that, consent can be taken away in the Act.
Oh.
Yes.
So we've already started.
Yes. Then you're like,
still say,
get off me.
Yeah.
You've taken back your consent. Because you always hold that power. That power cannot be taken from you because now you're married. Or some guy told you, be my girlfriend, and then you agreed. Then he can't just come show up wherever you are and have sex with you.
Yeah.
You have to give consent. That is the nature of sexual acts. Without consent in any sexual act, that is a sexual offense. Yes.
Oh, wow. I feel like there are a lot of women who did not know that.
Yeah. I think the confusion is between conjugal rights and consent.
Exactly.
Conjugal rights do not mean consent.
I thought they were the same thing.
No. Consent has to be given freely at each point of contact in that act. Before or during the act, consent has to be present.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you did not know, it's possible to be raped by your husband or by your boyfriend. It's not right, and you can say something against it. Thank you so much for empowering me and everybody else who's watching.
You're welcome.
Once again, this is Njoroge, and he's coming to just talk to us about consent. Please, let's continue this conversation in the comment section. Let me know, what did you think about everything we had to say? Do you have any more questions? Do you have any additions? And I would really love to hear from you. Once again, remember to like, share, subscribe, and to hit that notification bell so that you can get to know when I post new videos. Thank you so much, Njoroge.
Welcome.
And thank you for watching. Bye.